Hello everybody, Baxter75 here with more, well, I don't really know, but today we're not playing Destiny. Yes, it's a first. Instead we're playing this game that I have actually never played on my channel called LittleBigPlanet 3. If you guys know it, then, well, good for you. If you don't, then let me give you, I guess I could just give you a backstory. Okay, before we get started, LittleBigPlanet 3 is a really advanced game, so if you want to know anything about it, you're gonna have to go watch some walkthrough or anything, because, like, I cannot help that. I cannot. I'm playing this for entertainment purposes, not really for walkthroughs, or like, oh, please make sure to like and subscribe. Nope. I'm doing this for personal businesses, and more importantly, I'm just doing this so I can get back into the whole habit of LittleBigPlanet. If you don't know LittleBigPlanet 2, it was a very nice game. It was full of creations, spam, you know, a lot of moderations, you know. I can't really describe it because it was such a short time in LittleBigPlanet, and so much has happened. So, yeah, trust me, it's not the apocalypse, only because I'm playing LittleBigPlanet. Well, I'm just gonna introduce what LittleBigPlanet really is, per se. It's basically like this game where you can, like, use different materials or whatever, and you can create items, and then you can create them to, like, to your extent of your ability or whatever. See, I'm making a thing there. But LittleBigPlanet is not all about just physical creation. There's also logical creation into it, and that's where LittleBigPlanet 2 came in. There was technology, and that shook. It didn't shook the world. It made the whole world move in some sort of way. There's different types of logic that you would see in coding or whatever, and then there's also basics like sensory. So you can actually have different sensors and whatnot. You can move items with certain abilities. So let's say I just put a basic mover on the square. And let's just say I'll put the deceleration to 0, acceleration to 100, and movement speed to 10. What happens if I press play? Starts moving. So yeah, there's basic logic items like that make LittleBigPlanet so animated and creative. And then when it comes to more of a spectrum of technology, there's logic. There's like these gates, splitters, wave generators, and then all this is just settled in a microchip. So you guys might be asking, what really is a microchip? It's just it's an empty chip in which you could put in different sorts of technology. So all of these gadgets, like, yeah, the title is called gadgets. You can put in whatever you want. So I guess I could just make something for you right here. I'm gonna make a I'll make a 2 input item using the AND gate. So if you don't know the AND gate, basically you need both inputs from input 1 and 2 to activate the output. So how am I gonna do that? I can make a button or whatever, or better yet, a switch. And I could just put 2 of them down, and then put inputs for both these switches, like so. Also, each gadget and switch, pretty much everything can have more than one connection. So if anything, I can make one output, or no, I could make one input both functions, and if not, then I could just use the other cord and plug in the function right back. So once I flip those 2 switches over there, the AND gate should activate the output. And what is the output going to be? Well, then we can make something noticeable. Maybe a sound. course, we can edit the sound, like an alert, whatever. Pretty much everything you'd hear for when it comes to SFX, but just more. I don't know the word for it. It's a spectrum. It's a larger spectrum. But how about we put human vocals? That'll do. That'll do. Yup, absolutely. And how do I activate it? By putting an output. And I'll put the on and off input to this gadget. And I could put once per toggle, that way every time the output is activated, this is only played once, instead of it actually being on a hold output, which is something a little more advanced. So let's see if everything works out nicely. That was input 1 and input 2. It worked, I'll tell you that. And there we are. That's logic. And then if I activate it again, but it can never activate with only one input. And that's like the basics. And that's the basics of logic in LittleBigPlanet. Now just imagine like, oh wow, think about it. When you imagine something in LittleBigPlanet, it's kind of ironic because this game is all about imagination. So when you think about more advanced logical items, you can actually place a bunch of stuff. You can put a bunch of more stuff when you put your mind to the test. So let me see if I can bring out another piece of cardboard. And let me see what exactly can I do here. There's also randomizer. The randomizer basically just randomizes output. The NOT gate. Let's say I want to use this. It has an input and an output. The output is always the opposite of the input. This seems a little more advanced only because it gets confusing at some points, even for me, and I've been playing LittleBigPlanet 2 for a long amount of time. And I shouldn't talk because this is LittleBigPlanet 3, you know, when you think about it. Let's see if there's any lights. Here we are. Let's just say I want to activate this, I don't know. And currently it's activated because the NOT gate says that it's the opposite of the input. So what happens if I put a button? There you have it. It's pretty much just the opposite of the input. So if I wanted to turn on the light, I wouldn't go to this button right there. If anything, it'll turn it off. So what if I want to go to like the advanced class, like how can I describe it? Let's just say the highest ranking honor roll, friggin' college classes of LittleBigPlanet. Tell you one thing, I'm not in that class because I barely know any of these. So I'll use an AND gate with a couple more functions, or no, a couple more slots in them, 5. What does the OR gate do? When any one of its inputs, or all of them, are active, so it's basically X or Y. And what about the XOR? Activated when one, but not more than one of its inputs are active. Now that seems nice. I have an idea. I can use the OR gate as well. And then put a counter here. Set this counter to, I'll keep it at 10 for now. And we can duplicate the AND gate, and we can set it to different functions. So let's just say that's our first function, and we need to find other items here. Maybe we can put different microchips or whatever. So for this, I'm going to need a good number of switches. What if I'm tired of using switches? That's where the controlinator comes into play. This thing. Let's just say I'm getting very tired of putting buttons everywhere, switches. It's most likely overheating my level. If you don't know the term overheat, that basically means just reaching a maximum amount of space in the level. So what if I put a controller down, or a controlinator? That means when I enter said controlinator, all these buttons will have a different function on them. So I'm going to use the triangle button as the eject player function, just for basics. I got in, and I can get out. That's pretty basic, you know, but of course you want to use an eject player button in case you ever want to leave your controlinator, because I doubt you want to be stuck in there unless you're making a level which only requires controlinator for the entire time being. I can also edit the function and put in a title. Now let's get to these functions. So if we do the math, there are 5, 9, 13 outputs left. And right now our current goal is to use that counter to the right and bring it all the way up to 10. How do we do that? This is more of a puzzle rather than a test, but you know, I'm asking how do we do that to the people who don't know, basically, in a sense. Or simply I could just lower the input because I just, you know, realization issues. So right now I just finished wiring all the functions here. There's X, circle, square, L1 and L2. So if I'm correct, spoilers I'm not, if I'm correct, this will activate my timer or my counter. Let's see what happens. Well, I can't really see it, so I'll move this over here. Let's see what happens. Oh, that's also something crucial. If you want to disable pop it, you can. That way when you click square, nothing happens. You have to exit, then use your poppet, like so. Now the functions are working, but what's going on? Like, why am I not counting? Well, I know. It's because this is an AND gate. It only works when all 5 inputs are active. And let's just say my fingers are too small to activate 5 inputs. Nothing to worry about. I just take that off, go into more gadgets. And what if I want to use a direction combiner? Takes 2 inputs and converts them to 1. So I could use 2 for here. 2 for the third and fourth input, and leave the 5th input on its own. And of course you can also increase space in case you're running out for God knows what reason. We'll make this a solo output. So I wired this in a way where it appears as so. You cannot activate both functions at the same time without activating the solo function, and you cannot activate one without activating the other. In a sense, you cannot activate basically the first AND gate without including both direction combiners. So what happens when these gates are completed? If you see the wiring, it'll connect one to the OR, but both to the XOR. So we're gonna have to find a way to use only one of these gates, but we have to use both to activate one input, and then only one for the other, which they both have to activate the AND gate and start the timer. So how can this happen? Well, that's pretty easy because there's a bunch of buttons on our controllinator, and we can see the magic right here. I think I should probably move this back, or move it upwards, in a perspective that you can see while I'm still in the controllinator. So there we are. That's the square function. X is up there if you can see it. Circle. And then L1 and L2. So look, we're making progress. It turns out we found our combination. It was the L1 and L2 this whole time. So keep using that until we reached our goal. And I mean, it worked in a certain way where we found both our functions and we completed our counter. So what happens if we put this back to 0, make it longer, and then reroute the wiring? What happens if we do that? So now, as you saw, I did some rewiring, and I can pull this back here. And now, when the functions are activated for the gates, The secondary one will head to the AND gate and the XOR. So I have to activate only the second one to activate the XOR, which activates the AND gate and counts 1. But how do I activate both without necessarily needing both? I mean, how do I activate both without including both functions in the XOR gate if both are plugged in? Let's find out. X works, circle works, square works. This is not looking so visible here. Okay, here we are. It looks like I just stumped myself, and that's what happens when unexperienced people use logic. So I can't use the XOR gate without profusely messing up. So what if I switch it for a toggle? There we are. We found a way to activate all 3 functions, but the toggle button is preventing us from continuing. There, we just found a combination, L1 and X. Or did we? Apparently we need all 3 functions to work here. The toggle button keeps phasing in and out as I go. And what happens in the end, we still completed our meter. We found a way to use several wiring tricks to you know, make a logical example. So what happens when I'm all done? I don't think that was it. What I can do is move one circuit board to the other. And there's a microchip in my controlinator. So now, when I hit play mode, everything's now invisible. I can activate these functions, but I won't be able to know because I'm in play mode. So I'll reset this back to 0 one more time. Put the number count to 50. And what you can't see, you can hear, right? You remember the sound that we used? How about we use one of those sound buttons? And instead of putting a booing crowd, I think we should actually put something that makes sense. Maybe something like a completion. That'll work. And something also interesting about microchips is that you as a matter of fact, can put a microchip in a microchip. And then you can continue going to whatever you wish. I'm not going to continue this because my game will most likely crash, because I'm putting way too much logic in here. So what happens? I have all these tabs to close. I can just close the main board and call it a day. And then I can expand to my will and then descend as I go. So let's see if all of this works out to the test by making play mode and trying to find out what buttons work with which buttons. In reality, I'm just mashing buttons and hoping that the task would actually complete itself. Surprisingly, takes longer than I expected. Well, without a grid, we have no idea what we're pressing, so we're actually finding out what works with what. And there, we did it. While being blind. There it is. And here's what really happened. These were the functions I were using. I literally kept on mashing certain buttons in the hopes of it working. And there you have it, logical explanations, combining and splitting outputs. Actually, I shouldn't have deleted that. But there you have it. Combining different outputs, making them to certain gates, and making myself feel proud and feeling proud of myself because I made a little completion tone sound out of that little box. And that's LittleBigPlanet 3 for you. There's like a shit ton more. There's actually musical items. There's animation. There's scenery, actually. Scenery is one of my favorites. Back in LittleBigPlanet 2, I actually tried to create sceneries and shows or whatever. And yeah, there's so much you can do with LittleBigPlanet. But until then, I actually have to leave. I'll start trying to upload LittleBigPlanet over the weekend and whatnot. Even though I'm scrub at this. Hopefully, if I'm lucky enough, I can get some footage through weekdays. But until then, I'm out. Thanks for watching. Oh dear, I forgot how to stop recording.